Mike, yesterday you commented on John Kelly, the position he's in, a man who's given his life in protecting and defending the United States, serving honorably, losing a son in uniform, now finding himself in a position where he's grimacing as Donald Trump undermines our NATO allies, our European allies, and yesterday in Helsinki defending the indefensible, that is, a KGB agent's interference in American democracy. How much longer does John Kelly stay in the White House as the situation worsens by the moment?
That's a good question, Joe, and it's unanswerable. At least I can't answer it, and I don't think General Kelly can answer it right now, actually, either. He has a real moral dilemma here. I mean, there are people around this country who clearly disagree with his convictions on immigration, things like that. That's understandable, but John Kelly is a man of honor and integrity who has sworn his life in obeisance to the United States of America. He took an oath of office himself as a Marine Corps officer, and I imagine today he's very troubled at the fact that he sat and witnessed yesterday the President of the United States, his boss, the Commander-in-Chief, betray the country in front of the world. So General Kelly's choice is going to have to be made. I mean, he falls into what we were talking earlier, Joe, about, you know, am I so vital to the nation that if I leave, I'll be replaced by someone, a lesser individual than me? That mindset can take hold in any number of people around the president. But General Kelly's decision is a tough one, but he's got to make it.
Joining us now, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California, and with us here on set in New York, professor at Columbia University, Dr. Jeffrey Sachs. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Congressman Schiff, let me talk to you first. As the ranking member on the Intel Committee, you know a lot. You've seen a lot of information about what's happening with Russia interference in the 2016 election and beyond. You used words in your tweets yesterday watching the president's press conference, damaging, shameful, and cowardly. Were you even surprised by what you saw yesterday, despite all you know about this president?
I was surprised, and I think many of us thought we'd lost the capacity to be shocked anymore. But it was a stunning betrayal of the country and inexplicable at so many levels. Whether there is this compromise on the president, we don't know. Obviously, we're trying to find out. But he certainly acts like a president that is compromised. And what ultimately matters to the country is how he acts. And he acts like the Russians have something on him. The only thing I'll say that runs in the opposite direction is if he were a longtime asset of the KGB, as was posited in New York Magazine a week or so ago, his Russian handlers would be telling him, wait, slow down, Mr. President. You'll give yourself away. But it's hard to imagine him with a more damaging performance than we saw this week. And if I could just comment on your last question, I do think this is time for people in administration to say that they're resigning, and not just resigning in silence, but saying they're resigning because they can't be, they can't enable this kind of conduct. And maybe through their resignation, they could prompt some change in the president. But I think for many people in administration now, they need to think about the bigger service to the country by resigning in protest.
And lost in all of yesterday's news, another indictment handed down by the special counsel after 12 came down on Friday. Dr. Sachs, Congressman uses the word damaging. Former Director Brennan used the word dangerous. As a practical matter, why was it dangerous and damaging to see what the president did yesterday?
Well, I think we're out of control in foreign policy, and it's in the hands of one completely unstable and unfit person. We don't know whether what we're seeing is dementia, psychopathy, compromise, but what we're seeing is extraordinary. He's breaking the alliances, he's breaking international trade, and Congress and nobody has restrained him. What we saw yesterday was truly shocking, but it's been now several weeks, one day after the next, of absolutely shocking actions. I think his psychological state is really in question. There's a lot of signs of dementia. There's a lot of signs of deep personality disorder traits. And it's extraordinarily worrisome. I would ask Congressman Schiff, who's done such a wonderful job of trying to keep track. Will the Republican side finally acknowledge how dangerous our situation is, stop being an enabler of this danger, support the Mueller investigation, which is utterly professional and clearly finding some very, very stark things? Are we going to get a hold of this, or is this going to be a one-man show of a utterly unstable personality?
Well, I think sadly that you can't really count on the Congress. And what we saw over the last 24 hours is, yes, there were some very strong statements from the usual suspects, from John McCain and Jeff Flake and Ben Sasse. Apart from that, though, you had what passes for political courage these days. You had Republicans saying this was a missed opportunity, or kind of anodyne statements saying, I believe our intelligence agencies. That's not exactly political backbone, and certainly not the caliber of courage that we need to see from Republican members of Congress. At the end of the day, we could assert our institutional responsibility and stand up to this president, but there's little sign of that happening. You do see some of the members paddle from one side of the canoe. They're questioning Peter Strzok and attacking him like it's a Benghazi hearing all over again, and then the next day they paddle from the other side of the canoe and say, well, we support our NATO alliance. That's not going to cut it with a president this dangerous.
Congressman, it's Katty Kay here. I want to pick up on something that John Brennan was just talking about and ask you, from what you know of the way these things are conducted, would you think there would be some record, some recording of that 2-hour meeting from Donald Trump, between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, either from the Russian side or even potentially from the American side?
I would certainly think that there would be a recording of this by the Russian side. Now, I don't know what the circumstances were on the American side, but from the Russian point of view, if the president was saying that kind of stuff in public, you can imagine how much worse it would be in private. And if they can have a recorded conversation of that, that's more compromise for the Russians. First and foremost, they'll want to study it to see what insights it shows into his character, his personality, any of the psychological issues that were just mentioned. But they also might want it because they can throw it back in his face, either publicly or privately, should he deviate from Russian interests. So I would certainly expect the Russians to have some kind of recording. Whether we do as well might depend on what this president was willing to allow.
All right. Thank you so much, Congressman Adam Schiff. Greatly appreciate you being here today. And Jeffrey Sachs, lay out, if you will, your concerns, your greatest concerns about where a Trump presidency leads us as it pertains to America's alliances abroad and its national defense at home.
Well, I think the starting point is Trump, the man, and his psychological state. He is unstable. He shows very deep signs of personality disorders. Many people that I speak with, experts, think that he's evidencing dementia. And what is alarming about all of this is the extent to which our nation has become a one-person game. Because, as Congressman Schiff just said, Congress doesn't do anything but enable. The Republican side should see right now this is not a partisan game. This is putting our entire nation at risk, the way that the Republicans have been enabling this man. We have a one-person wrecking ball right now that is going to destroy global trade through his individual ignorance and whims. We have a one-person wrecking ball who is undermining every alliance. And the publics abroad, and I'm traveling relentlessly in Europe and Asia, are stunned. They want to have nothing to do with our country. It's not just Trump. He is breaking alliances. He is endangering our security. He's endangering our economy. And he's psychologically absolutely unfit for office. And for God's sake, it's time that the Republicans in Congress understand that by enabling this, they are putting the entire country at jeopardy.
We'll see if they provide more than tweets today and follow up on it. Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, thank you very much. Coming up on Morning Joe, another extraordinary moment from that joint news conference. President Trump endorsing Vladimir Putin's idea for Bob Mueller to team up with Russia to investigate Russia's election meddling. Of course, Putin's suggestions came with a catch. Plus, former CIA Director John Brennan just told us that the president's meeting with Putin almost certainly was recorded by Russia to use if and when the Kremlin chooses. We will go live to Moscow, where NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is on the ground. He joins us straight ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.